All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. No white lightning for me, unfortunately. I'm still not drinking. Uh,
I'll do it for you. It's
but
like
it's
when it's
okay.
like when Ben and I are partners in the beer pong. I can drink twice as much and he's a good shot. So
Uh, it's just as well. You said you wanted to keep it fun today, and that works for me because I was already thinking. I went down a dark rabbit hole on some stuff the other day that I decided, you know what? I'm gonna save that for after the new year because I don't feel like talking that like about that stuff during the Christmas holiday season because
well,
it's icky bad.
we can get one dark thing out of the way because Scott had a comment on our last one.
Okay.
And there's 16 comments in our last wheel of time, so we might have to have a big chunk of time for the spoiler section. I haven't read through them yet, but I don't know if they're all from Scott or if we got more people there. But this is his comment on our last FBI
Yeah.
Twitter leaks one. I stopped listening part way. I was getting angrier and angrier. And this is kind of the benefit of what we're doing too, because it's like venting in front of everybody.
hmm
And hearing it makes you angry, but talking it kind of gets it off your chest. So thanks for the comment because I would expect that you actually felt a little better after making the comment. So hopefully you did.
Hopefully, yeah.
And I mean, it just keeps getting worse. And I see, yeah, we probably will hold off because I see a penultimate reveal coming, and we're seeing he's giving different journalists, which apparently Elon Musk and I have the exact same taste in journalists because they're all the people I follow. But he's giving different journalists different tasks going forward. Schellenberger being the last one. I see he's a showman. He is a showman, and I see a little bit.
hmm
I expect we're going to get a final reveal on Rogan
Mm.
if I was to predict things coming out because Rogan's not a journalist, but he has the platform
Oh yeah.
that maybe they're going to put a panel of all these journalists on, or Musk himself giving the last reveal
hmm
on Rogan. But this last one, it was very revealing because we all want to be mad at Twitter and the people on top, and we got set up to be mad at them with the first two reveals,
Yeah.
but they were being pressured. They didn't want to do the things they did,
Some
and
of
that
them for sure.
yeah, some of them for sure didn't want to do the things they did, and that's scary. I put 1984 up there again, just a recent, fresh on my mind read, and everybody said, "Oh, everybody's blowing things up with 1984 references." That's a book. It's a caricature.
hmm
So how are when you have a caricature done? If you have a broad chin, you're going to have an extremely broad chin in the caricature. Yes, these things are happening on smaller levels, and the caricature makes it gives the emotional feeling you need to take an act to make sure it doesn't happen in full scale. And so there's everybody's lesson, and that's the most serious thing I wanted to talk about today, and it's done. We will, I think, if my prediction is correct, we'll revisit that here coming forward. But
Uh, dang it. I can't remember who coined this phrase. I was looking for the video because it's actually old. Um, so this was like back in the 80s, I want to say, and I feel like it was a leftist who was talking. And keep in mind that Orwell was a leftist. He went to Spain to fight in the Spanish Civil War. That's where a lot of his disillusionment came from. That's where Animal Farm and 1984, that was kind of its genesis because he saw the the totalitarianism of the people who were espousing his brand of utopianism. And so don't get hung up on the details. The point of I mean, for crying out loud, Animal Farm is talking animals. That's why I think
mm,
it's probably the better one because it's it's easier to take it for what it is, which is a fable. You know,
mm-hmm.
it's an Aesop's fable. It's teaching you a lesson with talking animals.
Well, and it disarms you from preconceived notions.
Hmm.
When you're talking about humans, we tend to put our own biases forward. But when we're this is what I brought this up when we were talking evolutionary stuff. I love primate studies because the observers take their own human bias out of it.
Mm.
When we're observing humans, we project ourselves on top of them. And Animal Farm takes that bias out for the reader because now we're talking just animals. And then all of a sudden you have a moment where you're like, holy crap, we do that too.
And in 1984, if so, he wrote that in the 50s. He wrote that shortly after the Iron Curtain went up, and he was more prescient than most people. It was like him on the left and Churchill on the right who coined the phrase Iron Curtain. And if you were a big dork like me and were paying attention where you were young, or if you were old enough to be paying attention to uh, the Eastern Bloc, the Soviet Bloc, that's what he's writing about. That's what it looked like. It was just, an extreme example of, all right, let's take this to its ultimate conclusion if they get everything they want. And if the West succumbs to this ideology of totalitarianism from a different direction, when he talks about the way people live, the way they act and all this, that's what life was like in the Eastern Bloc. Uh,
Well, and this is one of the disconnects with the modern conversation, the in real time conversation we're having. And this is what I want my fellow socially lefties to understand is 1984 was an example of actually both sides authoritarianism. It was economically socialist, but it was socially conservative. Sex was evil. Sex
mhm,
was for procreation only. The whole second act of 1984 was The Handmaid's Tale, realistically.
mhm,
And this when you have an authoritarian state, it takes both of the manifestations of it in the end. So if you're a trans activist trying to make an authoritarian move, you're setting yourself up to be dead, realistically, according to the book, but dead as far as what you can do in real life. So you're setting yourself up for the other side. When
mhm,
authoritarian takes control, whatever their values are what is projected out. And you were just the tool along the way.
mhm.
So for people like me who are very fiscally conservative but very socially liberal, we're trying to wave a flag that's like, hey, careful what you ask for.
A good example of this, of both what you're saying and what I was just saying about how it's not going to look the same. Just because we're making comparisons to 1984 doesn't mean it looks like 1984. That's why I brought up Animal Farm. And so a good example of that is Whitlock for a while now, pretty much all this year, has kind of been banging the drum, trying to say, hey, my family and friends and fellows in the black community, you better wake up because you have outlived your usefulness to the Democrat Party and the leftist movement. That the rainbow jihad, as he calls it, the LGBTQ mafia, that's the new black voting bloc
Mm-hmm.
to the left. So you better wake up because you've outlived your usefulness. And do these sets of values correspond to your values? Because socially, no, not at all. Um, but they've been locked in through decades of propaganda and manipulation, and it's hard to get people to wake up because they don't want
Mm-hmm.
to a great degree. All right, well, that's not fun. We've gone off the fun.
No, this was productive though, and I can kind of segue this into the philosophical topic that I had. We'll finish with the programming because
Okay.
that'll I don't know how long that's gonna take. It depends on how detailed we get.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to bring up with Scott being angry and angry and emotions. This is one of my big things I want to project forward when we talk fitness, when we talk psychology and all of these things. Emotions aren't bad. Even when we talk religion, emotions themselves aren't bad. Anger, we treat as an evil thing, right? But anger can be productive. Hate, we treat as an evil
Hmm.
thing, but hate can be productive. We talked about Orwell and his experience in Spain. What elicits more hate than being deceived and then finding out the truth later? And that spurred him to action to write books that we all benefit from to this day.
Hmm.
So that hate was productive. He was betrayed. He felt that emotion. He wrote some books. He did it in the best way he could because he was a very good orator or a very good linguist. So when we're trying to be productive, though, we want to harness these skills,
Hmm.
and you can see it in little ways. And I brought up our fantasy football league,
Mm.
and a lot of people can relate to this because a lot of people play fantasy football. If you don't think of another kind of competitive, office game or something along those same lines, you can tell who checks out. And who checks out is usually that they lost early, and they just kind of, when winning the championship seems less and less likely, they just stop adjusting their stuff.
Hmm.
And there's an opposite attitude to that. There's the attitude of you keep competing not because you want to win, but because you hate losing. And I think we see that a lot with some of the greats. Let me bring up my screen here, but go to a different story. Kobe Bryant hated losing.
Hmm.
And this annoyed him to the nth degree with his teammates because they were excited and they were pumped up and they were ready to go when they were winning or when there was a chance of winning. But the fact that he hated losing was why he kept competing no matter what. And that's why he's one of the greatest basketball players of all time. I mean, if you put a top tier in there, I think you should separate by position. But Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan are definitely always on the top of the list. LeBron James, there, despite his politics, are on the top of the list. They hate losing. It's not because they love winning.
I had a thought and then it kind of evaporated from my brain. Um, Tried to remember the quote from the great Packers coach Lombardi, um, that winning is a habit, paraphrasing, winning is a habit, but unfortunately so is losing.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to break the bad habit,
What
get into the good habit.
was it? Lombardi that said, "Show me a good loser, and I'll show you a loser."
I think that may have been him.
Yeah.
Um, I was also looking for one of the reasons I like Lamar Jackson is um well, the reason I liked Brady and the Patriots was their motto was do your effing job,
Mm-hmm.
without the effing. Uh, and Lamar Jackson's is nobody cares, work harder.
Which,
Um,
man, I was rooting for the guy, but he made a mistake not signing that contract because
yeah,
he depended on this year's play to get him
good
even
for
a
you
bigger
for betting on
contract.
yourself, but
Yeah, oh, this is gonna hurt, especially after an injury that people are gonna question your durability after that.
second injury, yeah, too.
Yeah,
Um,
because it was a PCL, right?
I think so. Yeah.
People who don't realize, so this is what I do, to injure your PCL is really freaking hard. We call it a dashboard injury because the most common time it happens is if your knee is up on a dashboard and you get in an auto accident and it pushes your tibia back. It takes that amount of force to injure a PCL. So you
Yeah.
do see it in baseball sometimes where they slide in and their foot gets caught on the base, But other than that, it realistically is it's a really hard injury to have. So hopefully he comes back from it, 100
Yeah,
100%. Hopefully he gets paid,
but
but
that's probably
he
more than
might
a
have.
year recovery.
Yeah,
That's
they're saying 3 weeks. I'm like, no, you don't injure your
no,
PCL and come back in 3 weeks.
no, unless it wasn't exactly that.
Or you're injecting some stuff to just not feel the pain and hoping you don't get hit in that way again.
Yeah.
Um, but
But the football analogy is another thing I was thinking about when you were talking because the game last night, um, the Packers still have something to play for, even though it's an outside shot. If they win out, especially since like two of their next three games are against or division opponents, if they win out and have a little bit of help, they can still make the playoffs. Um, the the Rams aren't playing for anything except pride. And for the fan and even some people in the front office, you wonder, stop. We want that. We're a good team. We just have a lot of injuries. We want that high draft pick, like when the Spurs got Duncan because everybody was hurt, but they were still a good team, but they got that top lottery pick and boom, now they're a championship dynasty team. Uh, but you can't tell that to those people on the field. Especially, uh the only Ram I really like because I can't stand California's teams. Uh, Wagner, their middle linebacker.
Oh, Bobby
Um,
Wagner's my favorite linebacker in modern
they
history. Yeah.
they were talking about him last night on the broadcast, and he hates to miss practice, let alone a game.
Mm-hmm.
He's a veteran. He doesn't need the practice, and they're 4-9. He can take some time off. He won't.
He has the best movement skills that I've seen in a football player on the field. When he goes back in coverage, his hips never leave the play. He runs back and at an angle without ever turning his body better than anybody I've ever seen. And that's why he's always in on the play. And I guarantee you that same competitive attitude goes into his training with his movement skills, with his physical skills, as it does with his competitive skills. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to put across, because you see this pattern in people when they can't win it all, they just kind of give up. Randy Moss was a good example. Jerry Rice is famously talked trash about Randy Moss
Mm-hmm.
it was like a backhanded compliment kind of way, that Randy Moss could have been the best ever and no one would ever come close. But he didn't care. He just, when he was winning, he was in it. He loved it.
Yeah.
But when he wasn't, he just kind of jogged his routes. I was like, well, we'll come back next game. We'll just do it again, instead
Mm-hmm.
of using those routes to get better for the next game, which Jerry Rice famously did, which is why
Yeah.
he's probably the best receiver ever.
What was that thing I watched? I think it was on Prime. There's a documentary called, man, I'm gonna have to look it up. It was like Chasing Greatness or Finding Greatness or something. They sat down and they talked to some big name athletes, the best in their field, and then the people around them talking about what is it that makes these people stand out so much. And one of the people they talked to quite a bit was Gretzky. And I didn't realize Gretzky had a brother who also played. So you've got very similar DNA, you've got very similar upbringing, but just that little bit of difference in the brain chemistry, the motivation, the outlook, the attitude meant that Gretzky became arguably the greatest ever, and his brother had an okay career.
I launched my YouTube channel, Real Fitness, our sponsor, Real Fitness, if you can call it that. Can I write that off of my taxes? I don't know.
Sure.
Sure, why not? But I also fought professionally, MMA, but those things actually push me to a point of physical sickness to do. because it's so outside of my character. This channel's kind of it's a lot easier. I worked probably 100 hours to get 2 20-minute videos out on the other channel. And here we just say, you ready to go? Ready to go? Okay, we're good. But I also knew that I would hate myself to the point of sickness if I didn't do it.
Hmm.
And when I fought, the hardest part of the fight was walking out to the ring, was getting out of that locker room in front of everybody and walking out to the ring. And I, after I launched the videos on Sunday night, Monday I was physically sick all day. And I guarantee you the stress hormones that were flowing through my body on Sunday, trying to get that out and knowing it's an imperfect product, were destroying my body from the inside
Hmm.
out. I mean, I was puking all night last night. That's why my voice is a little off today, because all that acid coming up the esophagus. But I also know that I would have hated myself for not taking that step as well, because I've been pretty good at most things I've done in my entire life, but I've never applied myself like I did to coaching. And if I didn't try to do that in another way, it would have just kept eating me and eating me and eating me inside till I had a deathbed regret later. And we brought up my conversation with my grandfather,
Hmm.
and that is exactly the same feeling. So that competitive edge is something inside us all, and it's an emotion. And to Saki back to what we started with, hate can be a positive emotion, because I would have hated myself if I didn't do the thing that made me sick. But now going forward, I just got to keep focusing on getting better and better and better and better and better at it. So,
Well, and this is why we're doing what we're doing in the format we're doing is, and I mentioned this way back at the beginning, is a couple of people that kind of changed my mind from a political junkie to a um more of a philosophical junkie were Jordan and Height. Um,
mm-hmm.
because they made the point very convincingly that stop trying to win because you need both sides. You need people who think differently than you do. You need the more left-minded people to push back and balance the negative impulses of right-minded people and vice versa. Left-minded people have negative things that pretty much anything, if you go too far, it becomes negative. So you need each other to push back and forth. We've used the example of the creative industry. You need those right-brained people to do the business part of it so that you can have the left-brained people, or left-minded people. Left brain would be the more anal. Anyway,
Yeah.
you need them to be able to be free to do the creative stuff, but if you can't build a business and thus build and maintain an audience, all the creativity in the world doesn't matter. So you need them both. Uh, and I completely forgot where I was going with that.
No, it's okay, because you brought up height, uh, and he's been a big influence on me. Uh, Peterson has also been there. I think he has slid a little bit in the last, uh, but at the same time, I'm going to bring up an influence here that seems like it's out of the blue, because, but it's very relevant with my own story, because I was sick because these things scare the shit out of me. Putting my face out there, especially something I think I'm good at and I identify with, scares the living hell out of me. I read a children's book. This is Jocko Willing's kids' book. A children's book was one of my biggest influences, because it's all about not succumbing to that fear. Or, well, let me put it better, overcoming that fear is what makes you the most proud. If you do something you're comfortable with and you succeed at it, you get a little hit from it.
Mm.
But if you go against all odds and overcome it, then it's a deep seated satisfaction. It's actually a true happiness. Randy Moss, when he burned somebody and got a touchdown, was happy. But as soon as he didn't have his way and someone was covering him covering him well, he stopped. He jogged his routes. Jerry Rice worked for everything he did, and he was never the fastest, never the anything, but he worked his ass off, and he's the best receiver ever to play. Kobe Bryant wasn't as tall as LeBron James. He probably wasn't as skilled as Michael Jordan, but he hated losing so bad that he is one of the best ever. Did you find your thought?
Yeah, tiny Jewish robot. Um,
Tiny Jewish robot. Okay. The
so
way to get us banned here already in a
uh
very positive episode.
that's so the point was that is that's one of the places the right got it wrong is haha, fun trolly clickbaity comment of of Ben Shapiro, facts don't care about your feelings. Yeah, that's true. It's also true that your feelings don't really care about the facts because
Mm-hmm.
they're feelings, their emotion. It's that's what they do. So, you know, you have to understand that in order to address those feelings, in order to whether personally or if you're trying to convince someone else of, hey, your your emotions are blinding you to these facts and
Okay, so
it's
yeah,
detrimental for you.
so we'll take it in the psychological realm. You hear the term clickbaity term, perception is reality. No, perception is not reality, but perception creates reality. If I perceive somebody to treat me like a dirtbag continuously, then I'm going to treat them in a way that they're treating me like a dirtbag, and eventually they're going to comply because you don't like to be treated that way, and it's going to happen. So you self-fulfill prophecy. Uh, this goes back to the Colin Kaepernick debate, right? Because the whole ideology, and he's a mover in it, is to treat a certain subset of the population a certain way because it will ultimately manifest in the way they say it actually happens. So perception is reality, but you make the reality.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why one that was the main reason I started this thing, because I'm trying to get ahead of that. It's like, look, this is the goal. The goal is not that it's happening now, that they're trying to make it happen.
So practically speaking, to that point, one of you talked about hated losing, and one of the things that held me back um was there's a difference between hating losing and being afraid of losing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Moss versus Rice is a good example of that because Moss was acting like he was afraid of losing, of, you know what, I'm just going to half-ass it and obviously half-ass it because then I have an excuse, whether consciously or subconsciously, that, well, yeah, I wasn't giving it my all because it didn't matter. Well, it didn't matter because you weren't giving it your all.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're afraid of losing. You're afraid of that hit to ego or, reputation or whatever, versus Jerry Rice, who he wasn't afraid to lose. He hated to lose. So he would push himself, even if that meant he could or would lose. He might drop a ball. He might come up against a good corner that he can't shake, but he's going to push himself to find out. And if it's one of those things that we talk about of you need to understand these things if you want to overcome these things.
Mm-hmm.
You need to figure out how to focus those emotions so that they do become positive rather than holding you back. You brought up the children with fear is a useful emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It
If it's
it
if
help.
it's channeled correctly, right?
hmm
Yeah.
So, but if you indulge it, then it's not. If you channel it and focus it, then it will help you um overcome whatever it is that's causing the fear.
Yeah. As a coach, I look back at other coaches I've had, and this is not a knock on anybody, because one of the points I'm trying to push across in my other podcast is coaching is an art. And not only do you have to be the artist, but you have to learn from the mistakes of other artists in your industry, right? And one of the things that my MMA coaches got wrong was they tried to pump me up with the emotion of hate, but they had the wrong target. Like, oh, he's sneaking into your house to rape your wife. You need to go get him. And it wasn't about hating my opponent. I
No, he's
didn't
not. I
need,
talked to him. He's a nice
yeah,
guy.
yeah, exactly. I didn't need to hate my opponent in order to perform well. But I kind of did it in my own mind, but it would have been better had a coach read the situation better. And maybe something to the extent of, remember that first match you tapped out where you were choked for like 2 seconds, which was my first match. My first match, I tapped out to a choke, and it seemed like forever, but watching
Yeah.
the video, it was about 2 seconds. And that thought would have been stronger in my head, that I never tapped out to a choke again, training or in the ring or anywhere, because I hated that moment so much. I hated that moment because the worst thing that could have happened there was the ref woke me up later. That's the worst thing that could have happened there. And I tapped out. And that emotion, if my coach played into that, would have been stronger than hate your opponent. It would have been hate this thing about yourself that you don't ever want to happen again. And I think that's a positive form of hate. Hate this, it's even behavioral change. Say you did something stupid at a party because you were drunk. Maybe that helps you not be super drunk again going forward, because, well, shit, I did this stupid thing, and I want to guarantee I never do it again. I
hmm
hate this thing I did. So there's a difference between that and regret, because regret is something that lingers, but that emotion is something that lingers in a way that you learn from, versus you hate yourself for. You hate the act, you hate that thing that happened, and you want to make sure it never happens again. So you don't. If you continue to do that pattern, then you'll start to hate yourself. So, uh,
Speaking of learning and art, you've just segued us into our next fun topic.
did
So,
I? Cool.
yes.
Do I need to
Um,
bring up the trailer?
yeah, because I'm gonna try and get around to watching it this week or next, but you've started watching House of the Dragon, which I'm interested in because people I like um have said good things about it. And so I've seen enough, read enough, and heard enough that I have thoughts, but more to the point, I remember when the trailer first came out and a lot of the talk and buzz around it, specifically a short little clip that's about to happen here.
Okay. So spoiler alert, we may get into some spoilers for the episodes. Though I'm going to try to avoid it, not just for you, the audience, but also Heath. I want him to
Mhm.
go into it as fresh as possible as well. But I am watching. I'm on episode 8, 8 of 10 of House of the Dragon. So, uh, but this is from the trailer, so we're allowed to play this because it's public information.
Oh, you didn't share with sound.
Oh, I didn't share with sound. Shit. Sorry. Hold on. Hold on, everybody. Don't let perfect get in the way of progress, right? Share sound. House of the Dragon. All right. Now where's play? Holy crap.
He's a foot. Do you think the realm will ever accept me as their queen?
A woman would not inherit the Iron Throne.
Because that is the order of things.
When I'm queen, I will create a new order.
All right, so that was it. Okay. So I remember when the trailer first came out, and there were a lot of people going, because of that. And it wasn't just that. So that's actually a very small part of the trailer. It was the focus on that in the pre-release media
Mm-hmm.
and the talking of, I can't remember their names. There were two main showrunners, and uh one of them leaned heavy into that. And in the silly post-show things that they would do, he would always lean into that and talk about it. And it was all about the wokeness and all about the social justice messaging. And the other guy, the guy who I've talked about before, who uh when Jennifer Salke came in and took over Prime Video due to a very dubious Me Too allegation of the previous head of the studio, she got rid of the guy whose name I'm blanking on, who was working on a Conan series because
Mm-hmm.
it was too masculine and he wouldn't tone it down to make it more like what she wanted, which what she wanted was Rings of Power and Wheel of Time, and we saw how well that worked out for Prime Video uh billions of dollars later. So he went over to House of the Dragon, and he's one of the main showrunners there. And they have since let the Wokey go. He has moved on to other things. And the guy who was working on a very true to the source material Conan series is the primary reason House of the Dragon is what it is. And the the thing that jumped out at me the most from the people I was listening to, because I wanted to know if I should bother watching it because of how the series ended, not just the final season.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever play Mass Effect?
No.
You remember people making a big deal about the final one, Mass Effect 3, about how the ending was terrible. That kind of annoyed me because it covered up the fact that, guys, most of the game wasn't that good.
Mm-hmm.
The one was great. Two managed to improve on the first one, and then three was kind of a giant steaming turd. The series started to have issues in season 6 for sure, and I've heard people make the case of 5, but I think 1 through 5 is where it's good. Anyway, so because of how badly it ended, I was waiting for the whole thing to come out and see, okay, did they actually nail the landing? And one of the things that jumped out at me when I was listening to people talk about this, it was that scene right there, that the more social justice minded people were focusing in on. But every person I heard talk about it said, no, that's true from that character's point of view,
Mm-hmm.
because that character is bitter and jaded because of things that happened in the past. But that's not necessarily true objectively. It is entirely true subjectively. And that's why the scene works, because she is making a personal case. It is not the writers making a a bigger objective philosophical case. It's not them making an allegory to real life. It's just that's what this character thinks. That's how this character feels. That's how you put that kind of messaging in there if you want to, without it being preachy and woke.
The word is organic. It happened in an organic way because she's confiding in somebody after certain events. And the certain events revolved around that because let's look back in history. The son was the one who took over. We just had a long reign of a queen, right? But at the same time, you look back at English history, that's kind of unique.
Two and a
And
half, basically. There have been two and a half queens.
yeah, we even have a king that killed a lot of wives because they wouldn't have a son. It's
Yeah.
this is something that's real and is
Mhm.
organic, and they played it in that way, and so that's why I didn't mind that part of it. And actually, the even I say child actress, the actress that played a child, she was 22 years old, but she played the child, was really good. I didn't like the transfer to the new actress, although the new actress is actually decent too. It's just I didn't like the transition they
Yeah.
did with the 10 years went by kind of thing.
Yeah, I was concerned about that too, because that could be kind of
No,
jarring.
no, I would say my review of the whole show is in general is pretty good but slightly clunky. Where there's the
Because they're trying
transitions
to
are the
cover
problem.
so much time so quickly.
Not only that, but they're trying to emote feelings in the audience, and sometimes that comes through in a very autistic way, almost,
Mm.
where it's just like I can tell what they're doing, but at the same time, it didn't make me feel what they want me to feel. Uh, and and uh, and I don't know where the disconnect was, if it was budget or if it
Hmm.
was the writers or whatever, but that would be my biggest knock on it. But at the same time, it's Game of Thrones light. It's a slightly less budgeted version of the decent seasons of Game of Thrones. And
My supposition is that because of how badly the series ended and how, not just objectively critically badly, you can look at that last season especially and say, what the hell was that? And you can look at the two showrunners, I'm blanking on their names. I mean, they said such idiotic things like, oh, Daenerys kind of forgot about that navy. What? She just forgot about it? Or we kind of forgot. What? You're the showrunners. You're the people in charge of the story, and you just forget stuff. You could tell they were checked out and they wanted to be done. Which, if you had an ounce of uh, intellectual and creative honesty and credibility, you would have handed it off to someone else at that point. But I digress.
or you would have just hated losing and done your damn job.
Or hated losing and done your damn job.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Work harder.
This is all
Um,
connected.
yep. So one of the reasons Bezos so desperately wanted his own Game of Thrones was the cultural relevancy, the cultural cachet that came along with it. Is for a decade, a huge chunk of the worldwide, you know, movie TV watching population was watching and talking about Game of Thrones. And that's what led to HBO Max and led to it being ostensibly, numbers on streaming services are hard to come by, a successful streaming service. When a lot of these newer streaming services have stumbled out of the gate, and HBO Max seems to be working in large part because of the cultural cachet of Game of Thrones. So that cultural cachet took a nosedive after the final season because so many people were so dissatisfied. Long-winded way of saying, I think the writers knew this, understood this, and they were trying to cram as much as they could into this first season to try and hook an audience and get people talking positively about Game of Thrones again. And they weren't entirely sure they were going to have a second season if they didn't do that.
I can see that,
Otherwise,
yeah, because it was definitely not as good as seasons 1 through 4 of Game of Thrones, but it is, I mean, miles away better than the ending to Game of Thrones. It has so much more depth.
mhm,
I think part of it is because the book was written, unlike the end of Game of Thrones, where
yeah.
Martin hasn't written the book. And this is the cynical side of me. I think he was waiting for the reviews to know which way he wanted to write it, because he wasn't sure how
Yeah.
to end it
You
himself.
you are not
And
the only person to say that. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, the acting is relatively good, including the children. Uh,
I've heard more than one people say that Matt Smith,
which one
and
is he?
he's the brother. Um,
Okay, Damon.
yeah. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
the
he's the character in the series where you keep it, like in the original Game of Thrones, you keep going back and forth from hating and loving and hating and loving and hating and loving, and he does it very well.
And that the
Uh,
king gets better and better and better as the series progresses.
yes, I have some modern medicine beefs with his character, but at the same time, the actor himself does a pretty good job.
I think if they had had confidence that they were going to be able to get an audience and hold an audience and grow an audience, that more logically speaking, it would seem to me that you would want the entire first season to be that first section of time before the big 10-year jump and the change of actors.
Mm-hmm.
I would think you would want that to be a full season in and of itself so that you would have a break before you switched actors,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe even, the actors grow mature enough to look enough like 10 years have passed.
Well, here's my problem: is some of these, like the actor that played the young daughter, the young princess, she was 22 years old when she was playing. I think she was. I think they said a decade and seven, so she was supposed to be like 16 or 17 years old,
Mhm.
and she looked the part. But I think you can take a 22-year-old and make them look 27, or make it believable too. They don't even have to look a certain age; they just have to look a little bit more adult. And I think they could have done that. And I'm a little disappointed because I liked the actress that was
Yeah.
playing the original part. And the same thing with her friend. I won't say too much about her, but she was also an adult actress playing a child, and there was just too much difference between the adult actresses they brought in, and then there's people that were already adults, and then 10 years later they looked like the same age adult, like the Night Protector. And I'm just like, they could have made him look a little older because now he would be my
Like
age. He'd be like
like
40, you
Arya
know?
Stark, which made that sex scene in last season so creepy because she still looked like she was 15.
Yeah, well, there's a
Ugh.
sex scene with the princess and the other one, and that's why I know she's 22 years old. I'm like, I just watched this. Let me make sure I'm not a petty. And I looked up her age, and I was like, okay, she's 22. Thank you. All right, we're good. Uh, but
Um, the
but
chick in Conan the Destroyer was not, which is fine when I first watched it, but then when I found that out later as a dirty old man, I go, she was actually 16, more like 15 when they were filming, probably because she was 16 when it came out. I'm like, that seems
oh,
questionable.
why'd you have to tell me that? Come on. But no, I think they could have made it work with the same actors and actresses. Now, the really little kids that went from like a
Mhm.
baby to 10 years old or something, that's different. But uh, I really think with the age between 17 and 27, you could have made it work, especially since
Yeah,
the actress
but
is in between
it's right
already.
in between. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they could have made that work. I don't mind the actress as the princess as an adult. She's pretty good. It's just the continuity didn't work for me. Now, as far as the wokiness, uh, a lot of people that haven't watched it yet will talk about the Black Targaryens and stuff. They're actually not. They're
Yes.
they're the Viserions or whatever they are. The we call, actually, if we go to Wheel of Time, they were the Sea Folk.
Mm.
And we have from the original Game of Thrones, the pirate was a black man. It was the same group of people. They kept the continuity. They advertised it wrong. That's the problem.
That was the other thought I had because along with the, I am woman, hear me roar stuff, the other big thing in the pre-release marketing and talking was, look how diverse our cast is. And everyone I've listened to says that is not a point. They are just actors playing their parts and playing them well.
Mm-hmm.
And to that point, if Wheel of Time hadn't been hot garbage, no one would have cared that you cast, you know, Nynaeve and Egwene looking like what the Sea Folk are described as,
Mm-hmm.
right? No one would have cared that this is supposed to kind of look like rural England and, you know, here we have this diverse representation, which one of the things that the people I think Critical Drinker started this, and I've heard it being echoed a lot lately, which I like, is that, and we've talked about this a little bit too in our Wheel of Time discussions, because you don't have diversification except in you don't have ethnic diversification except in modern metropolitan areas. It's just not a thing that exists in the world or has ever existed in the world. That when these people say, uh, represents today, what they mean is the affluent LA postal codes.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is where, I segued into this talking about people learning, and it looks like the people who were doing House of the Dragon learned not only the from the creative disaster of the end of Game of Thrones, but a lot of the woke disasters that have been going on since then. And while the marketing and the pre-release buzz talked about it, it doesn't look like the creators are focusing on that.
Mm-hmm.
At least not in the product. Some of them may talk about it outside of the product, but they're not focusing on it in the product. And
Well,
I,
you have to give credit where it's due in the fact that a lot of these people that are producing these things know the boxes they have to check,
mhm.
and they're saying, well, how can we do this best? Because they're the homosexual angle, the ethnic diversity within a place where it probably wouldn't be as diverse, and all of these things are really difficult to do. But I think they did it okay. They did better with the race part than the sexual preference part. I think the original Game of Thrones already covered that
Mhm.
with what was the prince, the his wife ended up being the queen. Oh gosh, I can't remember which one it was, but it was the son of one of the major players, but he was homosexual.
Oh,
And
I
the
thought you were talking about the what's his name? What? No, it wasn't Diego Luna. That's the guy who was on Andor. The guy who plays on The Mandalorian. Um, I'm blanking on the actor's name, but
oh no,
he
you
was
no,
super bisexual. I mean, they played that up
yeah,
too.
they played that up, but it was natural because they were like
They were hedonists.
yeah, they were that was the culture of their place. Dorne was the
Hmm.
culture of their place. And actually the Dornish person in the new one is the most conservative sexually of them all. And that threw me off for a minute. But
Yeah,
uh
so it's hard to tell. So for a while now, and again, I think this may be a mistake from the people on the right, is uh talking about, criticizing and critiquing these woke products and saying, look, this is how invested they are. This is how much they care about this message over uh over box office success, over business. And I think there's certainly an element to that. That leaked Disney town hall where they said straight out our not so secret gay agenda. Those people for sure have an agenda, and they're
mhm.
going to push it, and they think they can push it regardless of financial repercussions. I think a lot of people, like, watching some of the disastrous She-Hulk show, and watching some of the creators talk about it, I think some of those people in particular, just live in a bubble that they think this is real life. When they say represent the world today, I think that's why it's so useful that people are pointing out, no, no, this represents your affluent postcodes in the LA area. This isn't how the rest of the world lives or thinks, but to them, that is the whole world.
Well, let me this is okay, so just a warning. This is going to be the most spoilery thing I say, and I don't think it's too bad, and it's not going to give everything away, but it is a spoiler. When we talk about, so we're going to talk about the gay agenda here. There's a right and a wrong way to do it, and I think this show did it right. because it wasn't just putting it in there to say in your face like they did in Wheel of Time with the warders. It was, we're going to have this in here to check a box. What they did is they put it in there with actually the intention of saying, what's the struggle of homosexuality when it comes to these kind of things? And you have a gay heir to your legacy. How do we make the best of that? How do we still have a family line when this person has this preference? And they put that in there as showing the struggle of what it would be like to be in that situation versus just saying they like this and you better accept it. It was, yeah, here's this thing that exists, but it also causes problems. And especially in this specific situation where I need a family line to be relevant in the world, it causes a big problem. And I think they handled that part very well. A little clunky in certain spots, but at the same time, it was a real problem that exists within that sphere versus just, I am woman, hear me roar.
Well, and the other reason it works is because when you talk about principles instead of partisan issues, it makes it more generic, so it makes it more relatable. So what you're talking about there is social family expectations versus the individual. So anyone can identify with that aspect of it and thus sympathize and empathize with the character of, oh, I know what this is like because I was expected to follow in the family business. I know, get ourselves in trouble again. So my wife had a boss who was a high level VP um in her business, and so very successful person, and he liked to joke about how he was the black sheep and the disappointment of the family because he was the only one of his siblings or first cousins who was not a doctor or a lawyer, and he's Indian. So that was the expectation for that family is no, we're working hard so our children can have a better life, and that better life means doctor or lawyer. Like,
Well,
I'm a
I'll tell you,
software engineer and
yeah,
I'm
I'll
a
tell you family
big time
experience too.
VP.
My dad was black sheep in his family, not because he, of all the obvious reasons he should have been the black sheep of the family, but because he in the men in that family were either West Point or Special Forces. That was the expectation. You were the elite one way or the other in the military, and he was an enlisted that got discharged because of his mental issues. So his black sheep status was because he wasn't those two things. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But going to the Game of Thrones though, the House of Dragons, I'd give it a B plus. B plus, clunky at times, really rushed. And your explanation there, I didn't know that about the series, that they're trying to do too much. You can see it, that you get that feel from it. But at the same time, maybe the success of it helps them slow down a little bit going forward. But it's decent. And I'm glad a random event caused me to get HBO Max for the free trial session, because someone brought up an Ashton Kutcher movie in training that day, and I was like, I really like Butterfly Effect, and I swear I have it on DVD somewhere, but I couldn't find it. And the only place I could find it was HBO Max, and I had a free trial sitting there, so I had to watch that movie, and then I was like, well, I might as well use this. House of Dragons. All right.
Yeah, I got the free trial of YouTube TV so that I could watch the Sunday games, and then I got frustrated and gave up on it too early because I stopped watching the Buffalo game with about 5 minutes left to go, and then I looked at the score later and said, "Oh, they came back and won by 3." Oh, I guess I should have kept watching.
Well,
And so I did
I
watch
have
all of
Buffalo
the games.
defense, and I got a whopping 3 points from them in a close game. And freaking Indianapolis defense, who I'm playing against, who I was playing against, gets 40 points in the comeback win that whoever was playing them got.
Minnesota, yeah,
Minnesota, yeah.
biggest comeback ever.
And the defense still scored 40 points. I'm like, how do you give up 30 something points and you total
39, I
out?
think it was. I
Yeah,
think it
you
was like,
total out to 40
yeah.
points, but my defense that played a hard, rough game gets 3. Oh, whatever.
Yeah,
Fantasy football
I
sucks.
made sure to watch all of the Cowboys game and wished I wouldn't have.
Oh, the Jags. I've never rooted for the Jags so much in my entire life.
You know,
I have a love hate with the Jags. I hate them because
yeah,
they're the rival of my team, but at the same time, there's always the underdog, so I love to root for them.
and
And I think
their
Lawrence
owner
is going
has
to
a
be a good
glorious
quarterback.
mustache.
Uh, I think Lawrence is going to be a good quarterback. A lot of people were knocking him coming
Mhm.
out, but he has won at every level.
He outplayed the $40 million man Prescott yesterday.
Yeah, at some point in your career, you come across a bad team, and he has with the Jaguars, but he's still playing well. So I think he's going to be the Matthew Stafford of this generation, where he's a great quarterback on a bad team until he finally gets to a good team.
Well, we'll see. Doug Peterson is a good offensive guy, so he can develop Lawrence for sure. It's is the front office good enough to put pieces around him?
Yeah, it always comes
Who
to the
knows?
front office.
Yeah. Well, and a little bit of luck. I knew that the Rams had uh uh injury problems, and that was why they're so far out of it when they were kind of our who's in the NFC? I don't know. I guess the Rams, I guess the 49ers just by default. The I believe it was the last Thursday game when the Rams were playing. Yeah, the when Baker Mayfield's first game, and they flashed a stat that made me laugh at how terrible it was. That game was the first time all season that the offensive line had been together for 2 games in a row.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much
Well,
turnover they've had in their offensive line from injuries.
it doesn't surprise me because we go back to our numbers game we've talked about before. The Rams this year are paying for the team last year.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you look at the bumps in salary for everybody that they had on the roster last year, they had to get rid of a lot of depth, which is why I'm really hopeful for the Texans this year. We just played the Chiefs to overtime. And realistically, if you go by roster, $1 million player is a borderline Pro Bowl player, $1 million a year player. We've got $70 million to spend next year we didn't have last year. And we got a lot of draft picks, but so you think rebuild, but free agency exists. And there's going to be a lot of people out there that are floating on that $1 million bubble. You can get 10 people that are really freaking good in that bubble right there. And 10 people on a team of 53 is a huge deal. So I think we're right on the edge if the front office doesn't screw up. But at the moment, Lovey's making me happy with his inventiveness right now, which his knock in the past was too conservative. And we got Cesario as our GM, the former Patriots
Mhm.
guy, and now we're gonna have a lot of freaking money to work with. It's
Yeah,
gonna
that
be
was
great.
my main thought watching the Texans game was, man, Santa looks jacked.
Yeah, yeah.
I I don't know why Lovey Smith isn't wearing a red hoodie all through December. It seems appropriate.
Yeah, red's one of our colors, so he could get away with it.
Asking kids in the crowd if they've been good or not.
All right, let's take a break and we'll do some programming stuff. I think
Yeah.
we spent an hour on the philosophical stuff. So
All right. So we've talked programming in the past kind of in general terms, and I was adjusting my program, making a new program for myself over the weekend, and I thought, you know what? We should do this in real time to give a practical example of how this works.
yeah, and one of my mentorish critiques of Heath over the course of our uh, communications on this subject together is he tends to overthink things.
Mm,
And it is a complex subject, but also some of the things we need to go back to the basics. So I have a feeling we're going to get a little bit of grounding with this, but at the same time, we'll also display some complexities. So I actually don't know what's going to happen here. So we're actually doing this in real time. but you'll kind of get an idea of the thought process with programming and what you're thinking about. And it is a back and forth. It's communication. It's blending the wants of the client with the needs of the client. And
Yep.
sometimes simplicity is key, but then there are nuanced things within that emerge. So
Yeah, keeping in mind our motto from the great Dr. Soul, there are no solutions, only trade-offs, which goes along with his mentor, uh, Milton Friedman. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
yeah, that's the thing I've been struggling with my other podcasts is again, I spent so many hours trying to film because it wasn't perfect, or I would stutter over myself, or
Mhm.
something happened along the way. And I think in the second one that I released, I say in the middle of it is I'm gonna freaking stumble over my words sometimes, and you're just gonna have to deal with it because editing sucks. So it's don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, but at the same time, you also have to have the mentality, and brings back to Jerry Rice, who I brought up a lot earlier. You always have to strive for perfect. So you're striving for perfect every time, but don't let it get in the way of doing what you need to do. It's a delicate balance because they're contradictory things. But so what's your okay? So going to the basics of it, and let me get my thoughts straight here. The first thing is that I always ask all my clients, other than basic medical questions, which I already kind of know your history here. How many days a week do you want to train? That's the first question.
Mhm.
Frequency is the first one.
Okay. Well, for as you say, preamble first after the health stuff, which you've seen, we've talked about that, and we've worked on that with, the squat video and some other things. So you've actually seen it and worked through that. Anyway, um, 6, because I have found that I need the higher frequency to uh keep my pain levels down and my mobility levels as high as possible. Um, so a push pull legs is where I get the best quality of life results.
Hold on. I had 3 templates up, but I'm gonna bring up another one just because you said 6 days. Hold on. I have a 6 day template where if I can find it. Oh, my own training.
If you think I'd get more out of like a 5, then we can do that. But
Well, but there's multiple ways to skin a cat.
mhm.
So the second question I would normally ask is what's your ultimate goal?
uh, Primarily increase strength, secondarily cut some fat.
Okay, so dang it, I'm looking for my 6 day template and I can't find it. Oh, we'll just make it work. Okay, so you want to get stronger and cut at the same time. Oh, that's right, you are in a cut because that's why you're not drinking because of the caloric thing. So obviously, first of all, we got to address diet and blah 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 blah. We've touched on that the last time.
Mhm.
But for workout, if you want to work out 6 days a week, do you prefer now? Here's where we go to the third question: do you prefer to lift every day, or do you want to do an alternating lift cardio, lift cardio, lift cardio kind of thing?
Lift every day. And
Okay.
this was the genesis of this, is because I was trying to force myself to do kind of a deload rehab prehab couple of weeks, and then I realized I hate this and I'm not going to stick with it. Um, I need to mix this stuff in with some lifting because lifting is what motivates me. Even though I know I need to make sure I do this other stuff, what's going to get me started is, all right, I get to lift today.
Okay. So in that situation, what I would suggest is a main lift. Dang it. I know I have this. Hold on. There we go. That's not what I thought it was. a main lift, a secondary lift, and then some sort of finisher. Sorry, everybody, for the dogs. I don't know why they're going crazy, but so let's just bring up an empty template. I like trisets, so let's go with that. All right, did that come up for you?
Okay, there we go.
Okay. Okay, so I do have six days on here. Great. Okay, so overall, there's Monday through Saturday, so 5 days a week. Let's look at day one. Okay, so the next question I would normally ask somebody is, do you like to start hard and end easy, or do you like to kind of ease your way into the week? So we're looking at what would probably be your Monday right here.
Yeah, I need to ease in.
You need to ease in. So
Yeah.
So for 6 days, I would normally recommend a squat, push, pull, because then you get the proper rest in between. So do you find it easier? So upper body is going to be easier than lower body. So do you find it easier to do your pulling or your pushing?
Pulling for sure.
Pulling for sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we're looking for overall strength, let's start you with upper body pulling. I'm going to start you out. Oh, you like to ease in. Never mind. I'm going to start you out with a lat pull. All right. So you can push yourself really hard on that. This can be a wide grip pull up or a lat pull machine. And I would, no, you know what? Let's do this. Single arm dumbbell row. We're going to start you with a dumbbell row. So warm up, active dynamic warm up, always go through it. And then I love heavy rows. So we're going to do sets by reps. We're going to do 12, 10, 8, 6. So you're going to do 4 sets and you're going to count down to 6. So the 12 will be easy, 10, moderate, 8, starting to push it, and then 6 reps. We do a tricep model, all pulling today. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a light leg exercise. You're already using a bench, so we're going to do a bench glute bridge to activate the glutes, and then a pec stretch right there. So here's the breakdown of the trisets. And this again, pimp my other channel. This is going to be a whole episode, how to set up trisets and how to set up these complex sets to add density to your program. But the poor man's version, you're doing a row, which is your main exercise. You're working something that will not hurt the first exercise and will give you some volume for those other things you're going to work later in the week. And I did it with a glute bridge here because your second pulling day is going to start with deadlifts. So we're focusing on the glutes, and then we're going to focus on them with a main lift coming up in the future. So everything has a purpose. This doesn't affect the first one, but at the same time, it's going to give you some volume you'll need for later and actually kind of fill in the blanks. Because we know as natural lifters, we need to hit things more in the week than, like, say, a roided up bodybuilder that will crush their legs one day and then not even touch them for another 7 days because they're continuing the testosterone. And then the stretch, I am stretching in the opposite direction of the work. So the exact opposite of the row is the press, and we're stretching the anterior structures there. So if I pick single arm dumbbell row, as the main lift. I'm going to hit a pec stretch at the end, working the glutes in between, because we're going to do deadlifts on day 4. Now this gives you I prefer to start hard and then end easy. So the opposite of that is I would be doing deadlifts on day 1,
Mm-hmm.
where
And
you're
the reason I do this, and you can see this if you've been watching and helping other people work out for a while. If your reps get better as you go, then it's a mobility thing. If they get worse, then it's a strength thing, basically. So,
sort of, because there is
mhm,
potentiation.
mhm.
So one of the reasons we work up to a max is the nervous system will adapt as we go along.
It
So
takes me a while to get even with warm-up sets, it takes me a while to get my problem areas loosened up. So that's one of the reasons so like if I'm doing a heavy leg pyramid, I do quite a few warm-up sets. I'll do more warm-up sets if all I'm doing today is a heavy deadlift pyramid, then I do a couple of extra warm-up sets than I would normally do to make sure I get to that working set and make sure that first working set is a quality set.
okay, so we did a horizontal pull for the first one. So I put a vertical pull for the second one. And I did a double set here. So we're doing a lat pull down. So now we're focusing more on the lats. The row is a lat, but also the parascapular muscles are working really hard there. So the lat pull is going to be a little bit more lat focused. And then I did a double set by putting wall slides second. So a double set is, so the term you hear a lot but is misused is superset. Superset actually involves opposing muscle groups. A double set is two things that use the same type of muscle group.
Oh, I thought a superset was when you grabbed some dumbbells and did extra curls.
Superset, set. But no, the problem with working back is it's a very complex structure. Like the
Hmm.
chest, the pecs, and the anterior delts pretty much push everything, and then you hit the triceps or whatever. But the back is so many muscle groups. You got your lats, which are the prime mover. They're the largest surface area muscle in the body. And then you've got the trapezius on the opposite side of that pull from 3 different directions. So you've got the the top, middle, and bottom traps. Then you've got the parascapular muscles like the rhomboids, and so they pull straight across. So all of these things, the teres minor, teres major, all of these things pull from different angles to create the action. So I like to hit them from a lot of different angles within the set. So you get kind of a middle of the road, hit everything at once with the row. The lat pull pulls mostly on the lats, but then the wall slide pulls all the other ones in. And if I can hit those back to back, you're going to get a little bit more lactic acid buildup. So now we're looking at a bit of higher volume here. So we work towards strength by getting to a 6 RM with the rows. And now I would say, I don't want to hit you too much with volume on day 1 because I want you to perform well throughout the week since you're trying to train 6 days in a row. So we'll go 3 by 12, 12 on the wall slide, and then you have ankle mobility issues. So we can use that same wall to work a wall ankle drill, and then we'll just say 30 seconds on each side on that one. Okay, so now you got a main lift, which is pretty much all inclusive. It's the closest thing you can get to a total body back exercise, which is the row. Then we're going to target the lats, and we're going to work on shoulder mobility while we're still working those exercises, because when you're doing a wall slide, you have to actively keep those shoulders back and down as you go through the motion. And then we're going to work on something that you're weak on, which is your ankle mobility. That's why you have trouble squatting as deep.
Hmm.
So, and you're going to use the same equipment that you use for the first two. So again, like I said, basic but complex. It's there's a lot of balance here. Now, 6 days in a row, I don't want to do too much volume. So I'm probably going to stop with 3 here instead of going on to a 4. I'm trying to think what else you're kind of weak in when it comes to back exercises. Because I'm going to hit you with legs tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to still give you a kind of an easy day. Lat pull, single arm rows. Let's just do a band circuit. We're going to do pull aparts. No monies. And a face pull. Back to back. So these are all kind of easy, but if we do 15 reps of each, we're going to go 2 to 3 sets by 15 reps of each. Well, that's 45 reps back to back to back. So I like to call these back to back to back exercises. And that's going to give you a real good little burn in your mid and lower back. And then after that, back days are hard to do when it comes to cardio. So we're going to skip 4 here. Do you have a rower available?
Yeah, if I go to the gym.
Okay, so if you do this one at the gym, well, you probably will have to for the lat pull anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say rower hit training, intensity interval training. There, hit training actually has 2 meanings. If you use 2 I's, it's high intensity interval training. Otherwise, it's high intensity training. It's separate thing I don't use very often. So if I ever just say hit, it's the II version. High intensity interval training. So get you a 30-30 timer or do some Tabatas or something like that. So that's what I would put there. So the volume on strength, you're going to work up to a peak. You're going to get some muscle density training, and then you're going to get some lactic acid training, and then you're going to do your cardio, because you have to do your cardio because you're trying to cut down some fat, right?
As well as hitting those movements that are going to push the scat back into a more neutral posture, since it tends to round from all the sitting.
Yeah, finishers can be, as long as the muscle damage is held to a minimum, finishers can be pretty much anything. But I do like to, and this is kind of the Cressy approach as well, I do like them to match the movements that we're reinforcing for that day. So you can do a lot of different things there, but at the same time, the rower fits there because he's doing a lot of rowing and back type motions. Well, day 2, we gave you an easy day. You got to do some squats here. And because we work back first, you got to do front squats. Yeah. What I do? There we go. I know front squats suck for a lot of people, but that would be the best fit if you were doing 2 days in a row there. But also it's going to reinforce the posture as well. So that's a benefit there. And we're working strength as well. So I'm going to do more of a Jim Wendler 5-3-1, 8-5-3, and then 3 plus. Okay. So seems pretty standard. You're just counting down to 3, but that 3 plus, if you felt like you were pretty close on the first 3, then you would try to rep out an extra one, but you try to get to your 3 rep max. If you get it right, you're hitting 3. If you're too light, you can hit more, and you're not trying to be too heavy. So you err on the side of caution. But what it allows you to do is have a max effort set at the end, even if you get your math wrong. So that's kind of where I'll start here. A little bit of an advanced technique. I don't recommend beginner starting there, but with the front squats, you kind of know where you are, I think. Oh, let's do a foam roll, T-spine stretch. No, we'll do that as C. Hold on. So you'll end with the stretch. Foam roll, T-spine stretch. And let's do a double stimulus from the day before. So we want to hit the back lightly. Let's do we'll still be in the squat rack. So band, shoulder rolls. Okay, so with that exercise, you're hitting the scapula in a rotational manner. So it looks like this, but you have a band pulling out here. So you can hit that a lot of the things you hit the day before really lightly and get some blood flow there. So they're going to be tight from what you did the day before, and so you can get some blood flow there and then stretch in the direction that is opposite of the elbow position of the front squat. So good combo there. This one you want to do relatively high rep, and this one we'll do for a minute. So 60 seconds. Okay, so let's see, legs. And we got 2 days before we deadlift. So let's do some glute bridges. That's a good combo. So weighted bridges, hip thrusts. If you, I think Contreras calls them hip thrusts. So if you're looking online for what these exercises are, I call them weighted bridge, but a lot of people
I
call them.
believe he differentiates if you're flat on the floor, he calls it a bridge. If your shoulders are elevated, he calls it a hip thrust. I'm mostly sure from the programs I've looked at of his.
Which is funny because flat on the floor I call a buck, and shoulders on the bench I call a bridge.
See, that makes sense to me because of wrestling. So if I'm flat on the floor and I'm bridging.
Yeah. Well, what makes sense to me is what the end look is, and if you bridge with your back on a bench, you make a bridge. Whereas if you're on the ground, you make an angle. It's not a bridge. So I call those bucks. And from wrestling, I thought we were bucking when
We
we were
called it a bridge, though. I learned it as a bridge.
Yeah. I learned it from you, so obviously I learned it as a bridge, but I think at some point in my MMA career we called it bucks. Either way, that this is one of the problems with our industry is terminology is all over the place. But I'm going to hit you with volume here, but not too much because we got to do deadlifts on Thursday. Oh, we'll do the old DeLorme 3x10. Definitely we'll do a little rotator cuff because we're not wasting time while we rest, and then a hip flexor stretch because that pairs very well with those bridges. Okay, so swords is a rotator cuff exercise where you're working with a light dumbbell, and again, it's reinforcing things we did the day before, doing something useful while we normally would be just sitting on our phone and hitting Instagram. Yeah. And then the hip flexor stretch, you're stretching the opposite side of the work. So swords, we'll go 15. That's light. No, I got to reformat this thing because there we go. That does that every time on that line. And then 10 each. Now, the number on the stretches, you're looking for something that basically gives you the proper time of rest, and 10 each gives you about that minute and a half rest that you would need for those volume sets. Let's see. We're still easing in, so we got to hit quads specifically. Are you doing this one at home or are you doing it at the gym?
I can do either.
You can do either. Well, it determines what I do here, because hitting the quads in the gym is easy because you can do like a leg extension. Uh,
I thought you
Bert,
hated leg extensions.
yeah, I don't hate them. I just think they're
Mhm.
overdone. Oh,
Because if I will do that sometimes of, all right, I want to work, I want to do heavier squats, so I'll start out here because all they have are Smith machines, and which I don't mind, but they changed them all so they only have the angled ones, which I don't like because yeah, they're good for certain things, not so good for other things. Anyway, um,
well, you're gonna hate me here because you know what I'm about to do now.
mhm.
All right. You know, a leg circuit is coming.
Yep. So it only takes me about 5 minutes to get to the gym. So sometimes I'll do, and I do the air quotes because uh I'm a grumpy old turd and I go to Planet Fitness and it's a gym.
Well, you know what? We forgot abs on day one.
It's all right.
We'll go back. We'll go back to that.
I'll just crack a six pack.
So this will be single leg. Oh, you got an ab wheel?
Hmm.
There you go. And then I'll give you a little bit of break. All right. So you got a leg circuit, and we're going to walk for 8 reps on each leg. Same for the lateral. And we'll do the same for the single leg RDLs so you can work your balance. And then we'll bump that up to 15 on the rollouts. And then you don't get too much of a break. We'll go back down to 8 for the T rotations. And the good thing about this one is you get your conditioning there at the end as well. So we don't have to do any extra. So this is a little bit lower volume day. It'd probably take you about 45 minutes tops if you do a long warm up. So the thing about a 6-day program is you've got to limit your volume each day, because you don't want day one to ruin day 4.
Right.
So that's day 1, day 2. If I was to really push this out, day 3. So now we're upper body push. Let's give you your hardest total body one so far. You're going to do your bench press that day. That's the easy one. I'm going to put you back with some pull aparts to reinforce your shoulders. And we're going to hit some glutes. For those that don't know what that is, Cook hip lift is named after Gray Cook, who's one of the more famous PTs in our history. You hug the knee and then you bridge up at the same time. So you're working your glutes while you're working your hip mobility. One thing I don't like to do is hit complete strength on everything in every cycle. So we're going to do volume bench, and you need it for your boobies anyways. You need some volume. So we're going to do 2 by 8, and then you're going to drop the weight for 2 by 12. So you're going to go 2 heavier sets and then 2 lighter sets right after that. And that last set of 12, I want you to hit pretty much failure at 12. So that last one will kind of be a 12 plus. If you hit 13, that's fine. These are always going to be 12, and these are always going to be 12. All right, now we need some more booby-tastic stuff here. No, we need to do an overhead press. Let's do deltoid press. So we did the big complex for the chest press. Let's do Let's do a kneeling single arm press. So you're going to be kneeling on the ground, overhead pressing, and we're doing volume.
Now, why the kneeling?
You get a little core work out of it because you're going to have the opposite knee forward.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at the overall body as it works together in any kind of movement, the opposite leg works with this arm. We walk like this, right? You can't see my legs, but the opposite leg goes forward with that same hand. So when we're doing a loaded exercise and you have the opposite leg forward, everything crosses neurologically in the body. And so you kind of hit the muscular structure in the natural way of moving. So you can press really heavy while still getting a kind of a systemic neurological effect. So working the deltoids as a muscle, but working the body in the way it's supposed to move. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. All right, let's see. Kneeling overhead press. We're pulling the next day. So I like to pair these with like flies or something, but I don't want to do that here because again, you made things a little bit more complicated by doing 6 days.
Excellent.
6 day lift. So we're a little bit more limited. I like to pair these with reverse flies, but we're about to do deadlifts the next day, and I don't want to ruin that. So you challenged me on this one. This is the hardest day so far. You know what? Let's do some double stimulus from the day before, and we're going to do a TKE, which stands for terminal knee extension because it's the last bit of a knee extension. But one of my kid clients dubbed this the knee exercise at one point. So from a letter standpoint, both work. But you put a band behind your knee and you just do the last bit of a knee extension there. And what else do you need to work on specifically? So now we're going specific to the client. Any bit of postural work is good. So let's do a bench T-spine stretch. Did we ever do that one?
No.
At the end of
No, you
this.
did the foam roll T-spine.
No, I'm saying do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you put your elbows on a bench and you basically stretch down to where your elbows are pushed back over your head. And so yeah, you can focus on that overhead press, get a little blood flow to those quads that should be screaming from the day before, and then hit a stretch that helps you with that first exercise again. So TKEs are light. So we'll go 20 rep. Oh, God, dog it. Formatting. There we go. Okay. And then the T-spine stretch, we'll just do for 30 seconds. That kneeling overhead. Now, here, we're going to do holy triceps. Dips. Pull over. Skull crusher. Okay, so this is a tricep. So 3 exercises that hit the same things. Back to back. Dips is chest and triceps. Pullovers is lats and triceps. And skull crusher is all triceps. And I like to count up. No, oh, dang it. 10, 12, 15. And then you'll take about a minute rest in between there. And then for your conditioning, going 6 days in a row, I'm going to say we cut this completely. In fact, There we go. Okay. I'm going to have you go for a long walk that day. You're going to walk for however much time you have to work out. If you're at the gym, you can do an incline walk. So again, for a lot of people out there, this is not going to seem like a lot for a workout, but we're going 6 days in a row. And that was why that was the first question, because I need to know how much I can do each day. And it really realistically is the most important question. So I can't do a whole lot more than this if I'm going to repeat it in just 2 or 3 days. So unless you're doing drugs that I don't know about, and I try not to train people that do. So hopefully we're not liver kinging this. Day 4, this is the best day. My favorite. Deadlift is the main lift. And how are your deadlifts these days?
Pretty good.
Pretty good?
Yeah,
Like
it takes me a while to get my hips loosened up, but then I can uh I had issues with vanilla for a little while because I was focusing on so many other things, but I started doing them again. So I can do vanilla pretty heavy without worrying about my knees or my back or whatever.
Okay, so let's do another Wendler style. We'll go the original 5. We'll focus on this one. This is going to be our main lift for the entire cycle. 5, 3, 1 plus. So you calculate pretty much your 90%, and you put that on your 1 plus, and you just do as many reps as you can. Deadlift. Always good with a little hip clock there.
Hopefully I have to get more plates after this.
So there's a hip clock, and you'll just do that for your rest period. If you're doing a 1 plus, you probably want like a 3 minute rest period.
Is hip clock the thing I showed you, or did you get that from somewhere else?
I have 2 sources. What you showed me, and then somewhere else. So I kind of have a hybrid. It's a hip flexor stretch, an angle, and then straight to the side. You did one where you were like on a rack holding.
Block the ankle,
Mm-hmm.
so to help keep that hip from rotating in its socket. So that's the way I do them. If I'm just doing like a kneeling pulse, then I'll just do that usually straight on and to the side. But especially when you start to cross over to try and hit that TFL, if you block the ankle, then you'll feel the hip trying to move. You'll feel that ball trying to rotate and it can't.
Well,
So you'll
so I
feel the
prefer
hip
to just kneel and
more.
pulse, and if it's from the front or the side, depends on the girl.
Couldn't
Uh, and I
love
do
that.
I do like when the ball rotates a little bit, but uh, mine's a little bit simpler, but it's very effective. As we digress.
As we
Oh,
digress.
all right. So we just did deadlifts, so our back's gonna be a little tired. Let's do. Oh, I almost forgot one of my favorite combos here. Instead of lat pulls, you're going to do an actual. We're not going to pull up. We're going to do a chin up, because not only are they back to back exercises, but you're going to get a little traction after you just did deadlifts. So because you're hanging from a bar, your spine is going to get a little traction, especially if you can add a little extra weight. But we want volume here. So we're going to do 4 sets. Oh, how are your chin ups these days?
Not great.
Not
Not
great.
as good as my dips. I can add weight to my dips. I can't add weight to my pull-ups.
We'll do 4x8 then, and we'll work that up. If they're not great, to make sure you have all 8 reps each time, we'll put something that lasts a little longer in here. What did we work the day before? We worked chest the day before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we want to do Let's do a stick press. So for those that don't know, the stick press is you get in the rack with a stick and you slide it up, and all the while you're stretching the chest out. So it's just like the wall slide, but you're passively stretching the chest instead of actively pulling back. So that will go higher rep since we just worked chest the day before. And let's see. This is a harder one. Oh, I like to work the glutes here. Let's do a leg curl. No. Let's not do a leg curl there because we're working legs tomorrow. But I do want to work the glutes here. Oh,
Would a kettlebell swing be too much arm engagement, or would
hey,
that be good
hold
pop
on
up?
to that thought because we're about to
Okay.
get to those. No, kettlebell swing would be okay here. But I want to work the glutes. Oh, because I'm going to use the kettlebell swing for our conditioning here in a little bit. Kettlebell swings, actually, if it was just a pure lifting program, that would be a good spot there. But at the same time, we do need to do our conditioning every day because we're in a cut phase.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a couple combos that we do with the kettlebell coming up here. But you're going to use a band here. And
Okay.
so and dang it, it switched to date again. All right. 12 each. Okay, so this is where you'll be like the Instagram model in the gym.
Oh, goody.
Yeah, in between chin ups. But no, this is something you need because your external rotators, your hip, are actually kind of weak, based on the balance assessment we did before. So this is where it's actually appropriate. Oh, and now we need a little volume for the back. Oh, you know what? You got legs tomorrow, so we'll do a reverse fly, hammer curl, and let me think about that last one. But we'll go to the end here. This is where the kettlebell swing comes in. One of my favorite combos. And how does impact work on you? Jumping jacks, stuff like that.
Just depends on how my neck's feeling that day, but I've been mixing in so what I've been doing for my conditioning and cut phase is uh jumping rope to do cardio accelerated drop sets. So I've been adding jump rope back in, and it's been all right.
Okay, so here's a nice little combo you can do almost anywhere. Kettlebell swing 15, alternating V-ups 20, 10 in each side, and then jumping jacks 25 to cleanse your palate, and then repeat. And you can keep going till your heart's content. What am I going to mix with the flies, hammer curls?
What are you trying to accomplish here?
Filling in the blanks kind
Okay.
of physiologically. And I don't want to stress your neck too much. We could probably do some abs here without ruining your V-ups. Let's do something.
Or we could mix in
Well, it would either
I mean
be abs or mobility here, realistically.
pec stretch.
Okay, so you're getting that with the stick press coming up here.
Oh yeah.
You're getting that with the stick press. You know what? Have you ever done a sleeper stretch?
No.
Okay, that would go there. So you lie on your side. So pretend I'm lying on my side and my arm is in front of me. You're gonna internally rotate as far as you can without your shoulder popping up.
Okay.
Then you resist yourself coming back, and then you internally rotate, and then you resist yourself. So good little stretch there for internal rotation. These are high rep. These got to be high rep. 2 to 3 sets by.
How high? You want to do 20?
Yeah, you got legs the next day. I would say 20. Yeah, 20, and then this will be 10 each. Okay, so there's day 4. All right, so we got pull, squat, push, pull, and squat. I'm gonna get you on one leg here. You're gonna do weighted reverse lunges. Or do you want to let's do split squats since your balance still isn't the best. So that's barbell weighted split squats. And we did strength on day 2, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we did strength on day 2. We're going to do this as a volume day. So that's 3 sets of 8 on each side. So you're still working at about 75%, 80% max, but you're doing 8 on each side. And hopefully that helps with your balance and your strength on one leg. What do we need to reinforce from the day before? Deadlifts. Oh, let's do some scap retractions. And again, for those in the audience, I'm not just filling time, but we're trying to be useful with our rest time in a way that either works on something from the day before, sets us up for a good day the next day, or sets up the set we're doing. And I'm going to get you back on that foam roller again. Foam roll tensor fascia latte, which is the front side of the hip, because that will be what gets tight as your knee is going towards the ground on that split squat. So if we loosen that up between each set should get better and better and better. And that's an easy 12, and that's for your rest break. So we'll go 30 seconds. 30 seconds on each side. Okay, so now we did deadlifts the day before, so we've got to be careful with the glutes. Though you can work them 6 days a week, Brett Contreras figured out, as long as you work them differently. But let's still do something anterior. And again, this one is can be different if you go into the gym, because right here a hack squat would be good if you're at the gym, but it's really hard to do at home. I'm going to go ahead and put that in there, but we can talk about substitutions later. But this is, if you got a hack squat machine where you go, that would be a good one.
How do you feel about sissy squats?
Done correctly, I think they're good. I do them for volume, light load, but I can pull up a video if I can find it on YouTube of a guy blowing out both ACLs using them. So,
ouchie.
Yeah, it's not pretty. I do like sissy squats, but not here because we're still in the volume stage. We're not in the fill in the blanks kind of part of the workout.
Okay.
But hack squats will work there.
Sissy squats and good mornings are a couple of the potentially dangerous things that I do when I want
no, that's actually a good pairing here.
Yeah,
because
when I
hack
want to
squat is
do
very
light.
quad dominant. Yeah. And good mornings are very glute dominant, both leg exercises, and we're targeting the legs. Now, the only thing I would caution here, talking to a client, is your load on the good morning, because we just did deadlifts the day before. So yes, it would be a good double stimulus on that. And it's a good pairing with the hack squat or the sissy squat. But at the same time, you do want to be careful there. Now,
Brett
with that
Contreras has a
pairing,
good video on this. I wish I could remember the title of it, talking about rep ranges and fatigue, and basically the point was, look, you don't always have to go to failure. In fact, sometimes it's bad. It's
Mm-hmm.
you, then this is one of those instances where no, you don't want to push yourself towards failure on a freaking good morning when you just did deadlifts the other day. No, you want to do work, but you want to do careful work. You want to do useful work.
I'll have these formatted right one of these days. Okay, so with that pairing, it's a true super. This is a superset. So a squat and a hinge movement are considered opposing. So with a true superset, I need to either give you a stretch here or something completely unrelated.
Hmm.
Uh, let's see. And well, we don't want it to be a stretch that is associated with. So this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. Uh, you know what? We need to do a postural stretch here because we're hitting the lower body from both sides. So I need to. Either way, I stretch the lower body is going to affect one of those two exercises,
Hmm.
right? So let's do. Yeah, this is good. This is where we can go back to one we brought in earlier because you should be doing that every day anyways, and hit a wall slide. So you've got it's kind of like a double set here because the same things you're working in the wall slide are working when you have the weight up for the good
Hmm.
morning, but they don't affect the hack squat at all or the sissy squat at all. So if you hit those things back to back, then you get a little bit of rest before you get to that good morning again. That was a complicated set. I appreciate the challenge. I'm trying to think of other things. Any kind of T rotation would work good there as
Yeah.
well.
What about
Uh,
serratus work?
serrated, yeah. Oh, you know what? We can mix it up then because we have different kind of wall slides. Serratus wall slide. It's two S's, two T's, or was it two R's?
I think it's 2 R's.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, that's it. Okay. All right, serratus wall slides. For okay, so again, for those in the audience, you put a foam roller or something on the wall and you slide it up and lean in as you come in, and then
And
slide it back
don't
down.
feel it up here. It shouldn't be a shrug. If you're feeling it here,
Yeah, you got
you're
to
not
keep those
doing it
shoulders
right.
back and down. Keep those shoulders back and down. Yeah, that is very good there. Let's see. We did deadlifts the day before. We just did a leg circuit. Let's work your lateral strength a little bit. We're going to do some suitcases. So you hold a kettlebell or a dumbbell to one side and you squat, trying not to shift over. Let's do something rotational. So you'll just need one dumbbell or kettlebell for this set. We'll do a no, we'll do a carry series. So we're going to do suitcases, then you're going to do an overhead carry, and then you're going to do an off sit up. So you'll hold the so you can just use one dumbbell for this whole thing. Do your suitcases on one side, carry it down the floor and back, and then you hold the dumbbell in one hand while you do a sit up. And then to complete the set, you switch and do the other side. So right hand, suitcases, carry, sit up, left hand, suitcases, carry, sit up. And two total sets will be 4 times doing everything. Suitcases will do 10. carry. What's the floor space you have?
In the garage, not much. So, but I can do all this at the
We'll say
gym.
we'll say 10 steps. We'll say 10 steps. And then the sit up will go back to 10. Okay. Okay. So you again, the way you would do this is you would do your suitcases, squat, squat, squat 10 times, holding it in one hand, put that weight over your head, and then walk for your amounted steps. And then you would lay down on the ground and then sit up, pressing that weight as you sit up 10 times. Then you switch to the other side. So one side rests while the other side's working, and you can keep doing this kind of like a conditioning set. So 2 sets of each side should take about 10 minutes. 3 sets would be about 15 minutes. So you get a little bit of conditioning there. So because of that, I would say anything to finish that out would be light cardio
Mm-hmm.
or stretching at that point, because we still have one more day. All right. And we're on our pressing day, right? Well, it just
Mm-hmm.
makes sense that this would be our overhead press. Push press, a little bit of legs, finish with the arms. I don't like a lot of volume here for you because of your neck.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't done overhead presses in a long while. I've been doing dips on my vertical push day, weighted dips,
But we got
because
dips already.
yeah,
Uh,
those I'm not entirely sure why, but I tell you what I have been able to do is I kind of slouch down and make sure my upper back is in good posture. And I've been doing Arnold presses with my head braced against something, and then it doesn't aggravate things.
I like this here because I think with your neck, if we switch to one arm,
Mm,
your body can move around it versus being locked to a bar.
that's something to try, yeah.
Yeah. So a dumbbell clean to press where you pop it up to the shoulder and then use your legs a little bit and then finish overhead. Uh, it doesn't have to be super heavy. Just kind of play with it for a little bit. This is day 6. I mean, we just worked out
Yeah,
6 days in a row. So this is kind of our experimental day. A lot of
right.
times in a situation like this, I like to do a total body circuit, but with the split we did, we really can't do that. But dumbbell clean to press gives us a total body movement while we're still working that press.
And it lets me potentially aggravate my biggest problem area, because the next day I can ice and stretch and take it easy to let it recover.
Yeah. And with that, I'm just going to do an A and B here because you do right hand and then your right hand's already resting while you're doing left
Mhm.
hand. So you think of something that'll fit there. What do we do? Legs the day before? I hate to reuse things from a variety standpoint,
I
but
do a glute march because then laying flat will give my neck
yeah,
time to rest.
that's a good one. Or even let me put, you can have alternate here, a leg whip. That's where you have one leg up, and then
Mhm.
as you're holding the bridge, you let it go out and then bring it back in, and then you switch and then up, out, and then back in. So you can work that rotation as well. And that one, if you pause them, you don't have to do a whole lot. 5 each there. All right, another pressing exercise. This is where dips would fit really well again as well, but we're gonna we're gonna get you from all angles. Incline, press, and you know what? We're gonna go volume here. So we're gonna do an alternating incline press. So you have 2 dumbbells, and then you alternate from the top. That's pretty, go high volume here because you don't have to press again for 4 days. 4 sets of 12 each. Legs, push, pull, and we're pulling again. Let's work some abs. You don't have to leave your bench. Incline crunch. That's where you grab the bench and you pull your knees to your elbows. And then, because you need this kind of stuff, you'll drop to the ground and do some bird dogs. 12. And this will, oh God, dog freaking formatting. And that'll be 12 total, 6 each side. Can't get enough bird dogs. How have we been doing on abs? Pretty much none that day. Now, this one, the rower hit, you can alternate your high intensity row with some light abs, like a crossover crunch or something like that. We got rollouts there, so that's our heavy ab day. Nothing really on that day. Heavier abs, sit-ups. So we need some rotational abs in here somewhere. So I'm going to start with our support exercise on this set. So it's going to finish with a Palloff press. And this one depends on if you're doing it at home or in the gym, because if you got cable machines, there's lots of stuff we can do here. Let's go ahead and assume you got cables, and then you can do a dumbbell version. So let's do a cable crossover. So it's kind of like a fly, but you get to go all the way across with your arms. Let's do a tricep cable press with the rope, and then you can do the Palloff press from there. So if you've got a cable machine at the gym, you can hit all of those. And this is high rep on all of these. And then we got a day off after this. So let's crush some conditioning. We're going to do sprints. Sprints here. So I say that. Let's do a Tabata interval type thing. AB. Whoops. Have I ever shown you this?
Possibly.
Okay, so what it is dang it. When you do Tabatas, the hard part is Tabatas really suck. So people tend to drop out, right? So what I learned, and I'm trying to remember the name of the guy, it's in one of those books behind me that I took notes in. I met him at a conference in 2009, I think. And I've taken it from him. I'll give full credit when I look it up, but what he does is, because Tabatas have a dropout rate, a big dropout rate, is he takes 2 movements and you do them back to back, because doing one thing over and over and over and over again is more tiring than alternating back and forth. So you get the cardiovascular effect without basically something giving out on you. And so that's why I got the AB. So you set your Tabata timer for your 2010s, and then you do speed squats. This is my first combo usually, and then mountain climbers. And so you would do those 2 movements for the full 8 sets. So 4 sets of speed squats, 4 sets of mountain climbers. So speed squat 20, 10-second break. Mountain climber 20 seconds, 10-second break. Back to speed squats, back to mountain climbers, back to speed squats, until you get through 4 minutes of work. So the Tabata was originally on the cycle, and it was cycle. And the amount of quad destruction that happened caused actually most people to drop out of that study. So it's this allows you to keep moving back and forth, so your heart rate stays up, but you're allowed you kind of keep moving. And then here, second one, I like to make this one the hardest one. Oh, everybody can do some bear crawls. We got to have more bear crawls in our life. And then I make the last one the easiest one. So we'll do lateral lunge and bicycle crunch.
Yeah, I accidentally do that just because trying to come up with Tabata style splits where you don't die halfway through. So one of my go-tos is battle rope, then jump rope.
Because that's a good one too. Yeah. Yeah, we didn't put any battle rope in there. Now, pairing wise with the split, it would be a good one with the bench press day. But it would also work with this last day we had. Now, battle rope kind of works with everything, but if you're trying to key in on certain things, 6 days a week makes it tough. This was a challenging one, I'm going to say. Even though I was able to bang it out in 30 minutes? Oh shoot, it's been almost an hour.
Giggity.
But
Well, because of what you're trying to do here, so this is where the Professor Shamo brain is more complicated than mine. So the general template, I had already been fiddling around with a similar idea to what you did here, which was a core lift, which I was doing a pyramid to get my heavier work in, and then a secondary lift where I was more in the 3 by 10 to 12 stage. And then my conditioning aspect to it was in that secondary lift. So kind of one of my go-tos for drop sets is I do 3 working sets, fatigue set, drop set, drop set. And then sometimes I'll do cardio acceleration for 20 seconds in between those drop sets. And then I would do a circuit of corrective stuff, typically complementary to whatever it was I was doing. So if my primary lifts that day were horizontal pulls, so I'm doing, single arm pullovers and something else. Well, what I did the other day was something I shouldn't have done and may have been what triggered my neck pain, because I probably wasn't ready for this yet, was face pull to overhead press. And the press element was probably what aggravated my neck.
yeah, that's an advanced rotator cuff scap move. I don't get even my baseball players much above TheraBand for that movement where they rotate and then go up, but the band's pulling them forward. Even then we monitor the volume and stuff on that. It's great for anything you live through is going to help you, but the problem is we want to live through it. The two most important things, and I think the biggest takeaway for anybody that sat through that whole thing, is frequency and intensity are key. Frequency, intensity, and volume are key. And because he wants a high frequency program by doing 6 days, I had to reduce one or both of the intensity or volume. And I chose to reduce some volume, even though I'm a volume guy when it comes to training, because he also wants to build some strength. So there were a lot of conflicting variables there, but we can still work with it if we play just right. If you're new to this, I would really recommend starting more basic than that, and then changing one variable at a time. So again, this was a mental stretch even for me to do this program, though I think we kind of did the best we could in about an hour's worth of looking at it.
And this is where
I might look back at it and fill some blanks in where maybe you need this stretch here or whatever. I think abs, maybe we could do a little bit more than we did, which is great, because if you feel like you just need to do more one day, you can just throw in some abs at that point. As long as they're not like super intense. I wouldn't do like weighted heavy leg raises in one of those when you have deadlifts the next day, but you could do some crossover crunches or something along those lines. So yeah, we can nitpick at it, but at the same time, we did a main movement, we did an auxiliary movement, and then a little bit of conditioning each day, and that's the main goal. If it's too much, then what you do is you just put a rest day in there somewhere. So don't think of it as Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Think of it as day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. And if 1 week you take a break between day 3 and day 4, then you just extend it to the next one. So then 5 and 6 go into Sunday, and then you can take a break and then go from there. So these are organic things. I think it was pretty good. You can't have it all, and we had to sacrifice some things in there
Yep.
For some other things, but so you're not going to get as strong as if you did Wendler's 5-3-1 as written, but you're not going to get as cut as if you did Cosgrove's Spartacus workouts. But we got something in between, I think, and it fit with your schedule, and you'll actually be able to do most of those workouts in about 30-45 minutes.
And this is where I think it's a good practical illustration of something that you've been harping on lately when we talk fitness is, this is for educational purposes. I am not your personal trainer. And this is why, because this is where the personal part comes in, is this is structured around, my needs, my wants, my availability. I have learned through the, practice and sometimes the hard way is that I need to make myself get up and do a little something every day. That is my pain management routine. That yes, I would like to look like I'm getting ready for the next season of Spartacus, but I would make it through a couple of weeks of that, and then I would be in too much pain to move. I'd like to, break Eddie Hall's deadlift record, but I would make it through a week of that, and then I would be in too much pain to move. I need to get up because, in large part, because of the thing we didn't talk about, which was the active dynamic warm up that comes before all that. By making myself lift every day, I force myself to go through the warm ups, which is part of my mobility routine, and that keeps me able to move and do daily life activities.
So
There you
just
go.
anybody that's taking advice here, we have to do the standard. This is my standard disclaimer for my other channel, and it fits here. And would just put anything that says I and say we here. This is for informational, educational purposes only. I am not your personal trainer, and you're not my client. I do not know your medical history or your individual needs, which is what Heath was just talking about. Exercise carries an inherent risk, so please consult a doctor before engaging in strenuous activity. We cannot diagnose nor treat injury or illness, and programs posted or demonstrated are what I've seen and used over years of success, but it does not guarantee your own success. Good disclaimer there. That's my standard disclaimer on my other channel, and it fits right here. I know things about Heath that I don't know about anybody listening here, and Heath knows things about Heath that nobody knows. So anything that we discussed is the process, the deliberative process that goes on in your mind. And it's really just it's an example of a way of thinking, and hopefully that comes through in all the things we talk about.
Yeah, and that was something that came up in your thinking out loud that was useful is the balance. We're trying to balance multiple factors here, and one of them that you talked about when you were thinking out loud is this particular program for this particular person is 6 days a week, which means I don't want to kill you here because we're going to do this later. When you're talking about, okay, so we got coming up here, we've got deadlifts coming up. It's going to be our core lift. So we need to keep that in mind when we're figuring out, okay, what posterior chain stuff do I want to do here?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the specifics, the particulars were just a practical example of how do you balance these the idea of thinking through the various factors you have to balance.
And I did try to speak out what my mind was saying at the time I was doing all those things. So hopefully it came through. But it's as I opened up with this, I think some people would look at that and say it's pretty basic and minimalist, but the speaking out loud, I think, helped show the complexity of it. Because you look at the final product, that's not everything that goes through the mind of the person that is putting together the final product. One thing that surprises people when I let them into my mind is how chaotic my mind is, because they come into the gym and they see the result of it all, but they don't see what they don't see is all the handwritten. Oh, I mean, shoot, look at this. All these notes that are all over the place from everything I'm putting together at any given time. And what comes out is the end of all of that. And even then, sometimes it's stuttered out realistically. But you kind of got a little insight into that. Now, this was I think it was a good little example of all of that. I think it took longer than I wanted it to, but at the same time, it needed to.
Yeah, well, hopefully there were a lot of things that people can take out there for, as we say, educational, informational purposes. If something jumped out at you, leave a comment and we can address it in greater detail. If something jumped out at you, then do your own study, look it up and say, okay, well, why this and not that? What does this mean? And go look it up and figure it out, or leave a comment and we'll dive deeper. Giggity.
Well, and I think another thing that needs to be addressed here is it's the old meme of, well, why should I pay for that when it only took you 10 minutes? Well, yeah, you just saw the whole process of me developing probably 4 to 6 weeks of training, and it took less than an hour if we take out the verbiage that goes with it and the talking about what we're doing, and we just go into what we were doing. Yeah, it took me about an hour. And if you hire me as a trainer, you're looking at $65, $75 an hour, depending on the need and the time slot you want. But this also, you're not paying for that hour of work I did. You're paying for the 15 years of experience, the 6 years of school, the certifications that I went through, everything that went into being able to do that in real time. And again, it's that was a pretty damn good product we popped out there on the fly. And you would get even more in depth because I would sit there and overthink everything for a long time until I put it to use. And then I'd make adjustments on the fly because I saw something I didn't like in real time.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're not, that's the meme. You're not paying for the 10 minutes that went into it. You're paying for everything that allowed somebody to be able to do that in 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. The next step of this process would be, you standing there watching me go through the work and saying, I don't like the way you're doing that. Let's change this to that. Or you knock that out pretty easy. Let's adjust forward in that regard. The back and forth that goes along with the actual practice.
And that could be anything, and it has to be in real time. So I'm sure you're going to text me one of the days and be like, this hurt when I do this, or this was too easy, or this workout went too fast, or something along those lines. But yeah, that was good. That was fun.
All right. Well, hopefully y'all got plenty out of that. Hopefully I'm not the only one benefiting here, and we will see y'all next time.
Yeah, and hopefully we didn't make you angry this time, Scott. This was a positive episode, even though we started with the funky stuff. We gave the disclaimer. Anything else?
Nope.
What
See
are we
y'all
going to
next
talk
time.
about next time?
Oh, well, tomorrow, assuming that neither one of us are dying again, like last week, we're gonna talk the flood. Uh, we've got some. I'm curious to see where you're gonna come from it. I think we've got a couple episodes of flood because I have a couple different directions I'm gonna come at it from. So,
Yeah. And on that note, we're going to freeze for a few days in a row here coming up. So we'll figure out at the time, but I'm going to be putting up Christmas lights around pipes and stuff. So, so hopefully I can get all that done too.
all right, and we'll see y'all then.
All right, later.